Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihil Kareem. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And welcome to this session on assignment writing guidelines. First of all, can you quickly let me know if my voice is clear, if you can hear me, and then we will move on to the presentation, inshallah. Okay, Alhamdulillah. Since my voice is clear, then let's jump right into the presentation. I suggest you keep a pen and paper so you can take notes because not everything I'm going to be talking about is written on the slides. So you have a good sense of understanding what we went through after the session, inshallah. Okay, so first of all, the things we are going to go through are general tips on how to do a better assignment, things you should be doing and things you should not be doing when it comes to academic writing and the writing of assignments, frequent mistakes that students make and how to fix them. We are going to talk about plagiarism, what it is, and how to avoid it. Then we will talk about the importance of the proper referencing of the sources in your assignments. And at the end, we will be jumping into a live Q&A session where you can ask your questions through the chat feature in YouTube, and I will be answering those live for you, inshallah. So, before we begin, as with everything that we do, being Muslims, being servants of Allah, then additionally, when you are a student, and then even more so when you are a student of knowledge, the most important aspect is the intention with which you want to begin a certain task, right? So before doing anything, whether going into a lecture module, attempting an online test, doing your midterm or doing your final, or starting to work on your assignment, you should fix your intention, and your intention should not be to just attempt the assignment for the sake of, checking an item off the box of things that you need to do for a particular course, but to genuinely understand and gather knowledge on the topic that is being assigned to you and to deliver an honest and thoughtful, beneficial piece of knowledge that other people can benefit from. So fixing your intention is the most important and the first step when you are starting your assignment. The next thing is setting your perspective. Like, what do you want to gain from attempting this assignment? What are you looking to learn through the process of writing that assignment? What are the skills that you already have that you are going to put to use? And what skills that you know you lack are you prepared to, acquire and polish during the process of attempting the assignment? And then obviously you have your goals and objectives. So these are things that really just relate to your mind space before actually doing something practically. So from a psychological perspective, it's always important to, be in the right space, to have a clear head, to make enough room in your mind to be able to focus on a particular task, you know? So with everything that is going on in your life, both privately, professionally, and then as a student, and then when you are a student, the things you need to do in your courses, such as getting through the lectures that you have, the modules that you need to attempt, having a dedicated space in your head to be able to allocate to the task of solving your assignment is the first and foremost important step. So when you are in the right mindset, you have the right, you know, thinking frame, then it becomes easier for you to focus once you practically start to work on your assignment. Okay, so before we go into the assignment itself, there are general tips to put yourself into a better position to produce a more fruitful piece of work. So it's always good to have a clean and organized workspace. If you have a home office, that's obviously brilliant. You have a dedicated workspace, you clean it, organize it. Some people, they get a kick by, buying new stationery or maybe taking out a fresh notebook to write down notes. So these are all things that relate from the physical aspect and connect all the way to the psychological aspect. So having a clean and organized workspace. If you don't have a home office, then maybe clean out a corner of your room, organize your books, just get into the right spirit, you know, take out your favorite stationery to just, get yourself into the fun of it. It shouldn't be just a chore or a piece of work that you need to deliver. It should be a fun learning experience. And um, doing a little bit with your workspace or with the space that you have is actually refreshing and will enable you to, take on the task with much more productivity. It will increase your focus and your motivation as well. So, as you all know, you have your academic calendar, and in your academic calendar, you have all the important things that are going to happen throughout your semester, which also includes the releasing of your assignment questions. So it's always good to plan ahead. So you have the exact date in your head when the assignment questions are going to be released. And once they are, never jump into the assignment writing process right away. Download your question sheets and try to understand the assignment question for each course. For example, if you have enrolled into 5 or 6 courses, then you're going to have, 5 or 6 assignments in your semester. So it's always crucial to understand the assignment question before actually starting to work on the assignment. So take a good amount of time to just make sure that you know what's being asked and what aspects you are supposed to write about or to elaborate on, right? It's also good to brainstorm before you actually write and make a rough outline, you know? Keep a pen and pencil. Write down points that come to your head, right? And before you actually start to write your assignment, it's always best to research, organize, and have a good overview of the material that you are going to study in order to make yourself more knowledgeable on the topic that is being asked of you. So it's always better to research material before actually starting the process of writing as compared to if you do it on the go. Another thing is to stay on course. Don't wander off. It's always easy to, get lost in huge amounts of information when you're surfing online, if you are, reading research articles or books. It's very easy to actually steer away from the original question or from the original content. So it's always important to stay on course of the topic. It's also crucial that you organize the content and the information that you have. If you have organized your material, that organization and oversight will later on translate into your writing. So your actual assignment is more structured and your writing is more coherent, right? And another important thing is time management. As we previously touched on the fact that none of you is just going to be attempting one assignment in the semester. So if you have 5 or 6 assignments, you need to allocate a good chunk of time for each assignment. First of all, to gather information on each, then to start writing, and then also to have time for revising and editing, making minor changes. So time management is crucial. And also, one thing that I always tell students is you have a certain deadline in your academic calendar, which is the deadline for the submission of your assignment. So always give yourself a personal deadline, like a week or 10 days before the actual university's deadline. That will allow you to more efficiently utilize your time. And then you have enough amount of days to go back, make changes, do some editing, check your grammar, your spellings, your language, and it will save you a lot of hassle as compared to the fact if you are just barely finishing your assignment and you have to upload it within, let's say, the next 24 hours or so, right? And always, always attempt your assignments with an aspect of critical thinking, because at the level which you are, um, assignments are not just regular essays like you did in school or college. So writing a good assignment requires a certain level of critical thinking. So that's really important as well. Coming to academic writing and how it differs from the type of writing that you have been used to do when you were in school or college, or if you have had any informal education before, joining university. So there are a couple of things that you need to do and a couple of things you need to avoid when it comes to academic writing. So first of all, let's go through the things that you need to do, which is take referencing seriously, using all available resources of information, checking that the resources you are using are actually authentic and credible, maintaining a certain formal tone, using technical vocabulary, writing objectively rather than adopting a way of storytelling. So academic assignments, they are subject specific, and it's not like the storytelling kind of thing that you do in an essay. Also, you need to structure your sentences to sound academically and stick to the format that you are provided. So a lot of content that you already have on your course page actually provides you with certain format rules, the kind of font that you should be using, the size your heading should have, the size your text should have. And it's always important to, look at the requirements of each assignment and then stick to those requirements. For example, if your assignment states that you need to use Times New Roman, your heading should be size 14, your text should be size 12, and you are to use a certain style of referencing. Let's, for example, say you need to use APA, and you have a word count of, let's say, 1,500 words. So it's always important to stick to these things that you've been already given. Because sometimes when students don't actually read the instructions carefully, they end up losing marks for things that were easily avoidable. So you don't want to be losing marks or grades for that. You also need to look at the marking rubric, like what amount carries how much weight, how much percentage of the grade is given to your formatting, how much of a percentage from your grade is given to the actual content, how much of the percentage of a total grade is actually given to the correctness of your references. So you need to look at all these things before starting your assignment so you are aware of the things you need to be careful about. Some things that we definitely should not be doing when it comes to academic writing is using of colloquial language, which means using, slang or informal language. For example, let me give you a couple of examples. For example, you should not be using an informal tone. Let's suppose that you are writing and there are a couple of researchers that have an opinion on a certain thing and you want to mention that. So you wouldn't be writing a lot of people think. That's a very informal and that's very non-academic sounding sentence. So you could write something like many researchers argued that. So these are things that separate academic writing from, informal writing. So you should not be using colloquial language. You should not be using inappropriate fonts and styles or maybe, huge headings, colorful borders or something. Like when it comes to academic writing, in terms of designing, less is more. Just stick to the format that you have been provided with and don't use inappropriate fonts and styles. Don't change the verb tense, meaning if you are writing an academic assignment, you should always stick to indirect speech and avoid the usage of personal pronouns or language. For example, if you have a personal opinion about something you are going to write about, you don't actually put yourself into the writing. You don't write down, I think this is wrong, or I am in support of this and that. You could write something like the following argument lacks supporting evidence. Like you don't use personal pronouns. It's not something you're directly telling someone, but you're using credible sources to get your point across to an academic audience. Another thing that you should not be doing is copying information without referencing it properly or relying on inauthentic or haphazard content, like picking up random stuff from random websites where you don't know the authenticity from. And there are so many, websites, blogs, news articles, or even, you know, um, online, short clips, videos, random informational websites that really don't have an academic standing. So you shouldn't be relying on inauthentic content. Another thing you want to avoid at all cost is exceeding your word count. So, for example, as I said before, if you are given a word count of 1,500 words, you should not be exceeding, let's say, more than plus minus a 50 or 100 words to your word count. Like if it's very difficult to sum up everything in 1,500 words, try not to go over 1,600, right? And a question that is frequently asked is what actually is considered in the word count. So your title page doesn't include itself in the word count. Your table of contents is not included in the word count. If there are any acknowledgements or abstracts, those are also not included in your word count. the references at the end are also not included in your word count. So the actual main body of your assignment is what is included in your word count. So always try to stick to the word count that you have been given. And don't go overboard with information. Don't repeat yourself. Don't present repeatedly the same fact in, subsequent paragraphs. Avoid redundancy and repeating yourself over and over again. Okay, so moving on. Frequent mistakes and how to fix them. So students frequently don't actually understand what is asked of you in the assignment question. So it's always good to write down the title or the question that you have in front of you. Pick out the key words or the key concepts that you extract from that question, and then collect your thoughts and really try to understand what is being asked of you. And even if you don't understand, don't start writing right away on a whim. It's never silly to actually get in touch with your respective course instructor and ask for clarification if you have difficulty in understanding the assignment question. You have your course instructors, contact details on your course page. You can ask what direction you are expected to write in, and your course instructors will happily guide you about it, right? Another mistake that frequently happens is students not utilizing the resources that are already provided on the respective course page. So if you go to your course page, you would, for example, already have a copy of your referencing manual. For example, if you've been asked to follow APA style, there would already be a manual on your course page which you can download and flip through and familiarize yourself with. There is, supplementary reading material. There are modules and module texts, right? And your assignment is always related to one or a couple of the modules that are part of your course, actually. So attempting an assignment before actually going through the relevant study modules. Make sure that you have caught up the amount of course that you are supposed to have gone through, and then attempt your assignment. If, for example, due to a certain reason you're lagging behind on your course materials, on your lectures and module tests, and the assignment questions are released, and you actually come to know that the assignment question for a particular course touches on a subject or a topic that is farther along in your syllabus. So it's always good to first go to that respective module, listen to the lecture, go through the reading materials provided along with that module, any supplementary reading material that's also on your course page, to actually have a clear understanding, and then go back and attempt your assignment, right? Another frequent mistake is the writing of long assignments without covering the main aspects. That again relates to failing to understand what is asked of you in the assignment question. As long as you don't understand what you're supposed to cover, it's very easy to wander off topic and write down a rather long assignment without actually getting to the point that you were supposed to explain, right? Students also frequently fail to focus on relevant data and just, quote sources from left and right that actually don't relate to the topic or the aspects in question. Another frequent mistake is failing to do the proper citations in the style asked. So that again relates to, following the proper instructions. So for example, if you are asked to follow APA style 6th edition, then you need to be following APA style 6th edition, right? Proper citations, obviously, you have your in-text citations, and then you have your end of text reference lists. You always need to make sure that the number of sources you have quoted within the text also corresponds to the number of references you have listed at the end of your assignment. It's impossible to have, let's suppose, 20 different in-text citations in your assignment, and then at the end you are just quoting one or two references. That's impossible. You need to be matching your citations in the style that's being asked of you, and make sure that your in-text citations also match the end of a document reference list, right? Another thing that many students confuse when, citing or, quoting um, other works is that not everything needs to be copy pasted in exactly the same wording. Sometimes, in order to avoid a high plagiarism score, it's best to, read through material and then rephrase that in your own words. And then, provide an in-text citation because you did consult that source anyway. But it's always good to rephrase your cited content so that the plagiarism software doesn't give you a very high plagiarism score. Because as per university policy, from a certain percentage of plagiarism, you start losing grade, and sometimes you are even marked as fail if your plagiarism crosses a certain point. Next, moving on to plagiarism, what it is and how to avoid it. So plagiarism is copying somebody's work into your assignment or your research and not mentioning or giving them credit, right? So if you're copying sources without giving credit to the original owner, that is considered cheating in academic circles. And the term that's used for it is called plagiarism, right? Each author's book or each author's research articles that they have published, or if it's chapters or book summaries, or if it's a certain scholar's thesis, that's their intellectual property. They own it, they have all the rights to it. And you cannot use or extract a certain amount of data from that intellectual property, use it in your own assignment, and not give credit to the original owner or the original author. So if you're citing somebody else, you always need to provide the reference for it. Otherwise, it's considered cheating, right? Even if something is not copyrighted and you don't see that there is, any legal copyright attached to it, it still doesn't mean that you can steal it and reference it without giving proper credit, right? If you take any kind of outside information and put it into your assignment, always cite the original source. And obviously, you need to use the appropriate referencing style. There are many referencing styles. We have APA, we have MLA, we have Chicago, we have Harvard. But the most commonly used referencing style in social sciences and humanities is APA. And I think the bulk of IUU departments also require you to use APA. There might be a couple of courses where you are required to use another, referencing style. Always check the instructions. And if for some reason the kind of referencing style is not explicitly mentioned on your assignment question, it's always good to check back with your course instructor in order to be sure what referencing style you should be using in your assignments. You always need to also make sure that your in-text citations match your reference list, which I also touched on before. So if you are citing somebody in the mid of your assignment, you also need to provide the full reference at the end of your assignment. Okay, coming to your cover page for your thesis or for your assignment, here's a rough idea of how your cover page should be. You have your running head, you have your main title, then you have your subtitle, then you have your student information and the name of your thesis supervisor or the name of your course and the course instructor, and then you have the name of your university. So we can now move towards questions. We can elaborate on any things that you think you need more elaboration on. If there are any aspects to your assignment or any aspects about referencing in particular, if I don't know what semester you are joining us from. If you are in your first couple of semesters, referencing might be something completely new to you. If you are already in the middle of your degree or towards the end of your degree, you might already be familiar with, referencing. So if you have any questions about referencing in particular or how to reference, for example, excerpts from the Quran or hadiths, you can put your questions here. As soon as I start seeing your questions, I can start answering them one by one. Okay, a couple of questions coming in. What is the recommended tool to test your plagiarism percentage? So I don't know if you have previously attempted assignments and did your assignments with the IOU. As soon as you upload your assignment draft, we have Turnitin, which is the most popular plagiarism checking tool attached to it, and it gives you your plagiarism score. So if you want to check your plagiarism before uploading your draft onto the system, I recommend Turnitin. There is also another tool that's quite popular and easy to use, which is called VeriCite. Nowadays, many plugins that you can download for your Microsoft 365 also have built-in plagiarism detection modules that detect any plagiarized content as you are writing. So those are also something to look into. Something that I recommend for spelling and grammar check is the plugin that you can download for Microsoft Office. That's called Grammarly. I don't know if someone among you is already using that, but that's a free tool that you can download. It actually integrates into your Microsoft Office suite, and it provides you with spelling and grammar. It highlights your spelling and grammar mistakes. It also highlights any sentence structures that could be rephrased in a better way, and it actually improves you it actually improves your writing style on the go. And as you interact with it actually adapts to your writing style and provides you suggestions based on it. So it's a quite good, it's a useful tool. Okay. Um, do we need to write abstracts in our research assignments or articles? Okay, so if we are talking about your regular courses which are not research oriented, a basic assignment actually consists of an introduction, the main body, and the conclusion. So if you have, let's say, a word count of 1200 or 1500 words, um, an introduction, a main body, and conclusion would suffice. If your assignment is from one of the more research-oriented courses, it's good to write an abstract. If an abstract is not explicitly specified in your question sheet or in your question paper, then it's actually up to you if you can accommodate an abstract into your assignment or not, right? Okay, how to interact with the teacher while just taking video lectures. As I have told you before, for each course you have a assigned course instructor. You can find the details, the contact details for your course instructor on your course page. You would find an email address and their office hours, and you contact them through email. You can also contact your teacher through the Ask the Teacher forum that you have for each course. So these are a couple of ways you can interact with your teacher, and always allow them for 24 to 48 hours response time, because it's quite possible that they are living in a different time zone than you are, and they have a huge number of queries from many different students across many of the courses, because many teachers, they teach more than one course at the university. So always allow for a 24 to 48 hour response time once you send them an email. Okay, someone's saying it's my first semester. I have no idea about assignments. So if it's your first semester, probably the difficulty level of your assignments is not going to be very high from the start. It's going to be, basic assignments. So stick to the simple structure of an introduction, the main body, and the conclusion, and then your references at the end, right? Okay, how to reference. If you can phrase your question a bit more specifically, are you asking in general how to reference, or are you asking about something particular when it comes to referencing? Or do you just need general examples of how referencing actually looks? Just let me know in the chat. How to get the topic for research paper. Your assignment questions are actually released on your course page, in your academic calendar, you have a date, and that's highlighted as assignment questions released. So once you reach that date, your course page among the modules, for example, if there's module 1, module 2, somewhere in the middle, you would be able to see assignment question. If you click on that, it will open an assignment page, and you will be able to download your assignment question from there. And in that assignment question, you will see what topic your assignment is going to be about, right? When will you share assignment questions? The assignment questions are released as per the calendar, the academic calendar that you have on your dashboard. When you log in on your student profile, there's a date which says assignment question release. And on that date, your assignment questions will be showing on your respective course page. So that is where you can get your assignment questions. The next question is, what percentage is the maximum plagiarism that can make you lose the mark or fail the assignment? So ideally, your assignment should have a similarity index of less than 20%. Anything more than 20%, it's up to the course instructor marking your paper how many marks you will lose. Anything that's above 50% plagiarism means that this is unacceptable. Anything above 50% is not acceptable. Stick to having a percentage below 20. Anything between 20 to 50, that's at the discretion of your course instructor, and it is up to him or her how many marks you are going to get based on what percentage you have. Okay, somebody else is saying you don't know how to reference. Okay, let me get through the other questions and then I'm going to elaborate a little more on how to reference, maybe give you a couple of examples, okay? Do we need to refer Islamic reference and secular reference in 50-50 order, or can be one more than the other? See, that's a question that actually is specific to your assignment question. Once you understand what is being asked of you in the assignment, if the topic or the aspect you are asked to write about is more Islamically inclined, naturally the number of sources that you'd be using would be more Islamic. You could, in any case, to make a counter argument or to, provide a comparison, you could cite a couple of secular sources as well. But it actually depends on the topic if you are going to be ending up citing more Islamic references or more non-Islamic references. So that is something that cannot be generalized. It's always dependent upon the actual topic that you are going to get for your assignment question. So there's no rule that it needs to be 50-50. As you research through your assignment topic, you would get a sense and a feel of what should be the predominant type of reference you should be using for this particular assignment. Okay? Okay. Does the assignment contain a cover page? Yes, the assignment does contain a cover page. A sample cover page should also be on your course page. If you don't, you can ask your course instructor for a sample that is being used for your particular course. They would always be happy to send you a sample page. But yes, a assignment does have a cover page. A cover page normally has the topic of your assignment, then your name, your student ID, your program, the course code, the course name, the name of your instructor, the logo of the university, and then the name of the university. And on the bottom, the semester. If it's spring 2026 or fall 2026, that would be at the bottom. Okay. Somebody's saying, this is my first time doing online courses. I don't have a laptop or PC. I'm seeing modules on the mobile. I even don't know how to use Microsoft Word or others for writing assignments and exam. Okay, so if you are a student at the IOU provides you with a subscription of Microsoft Office. You can get in touch with the student support or your help desk and ask for, support in, downloading the software, or maybe a couple of tutorials on how to use them. I personally do not recommend exclusively using your mobile phone to study online, because there are certain features on the student dashboard that are just more clearly visible on a big screen. So while the mobile app is actually quite beneficial for studying on the go, or maybe checking your grades or your calendar on the go, you should be resorting to your laptop or PC for your main chunk of study. So if you don't have a laptop or a PC, I suggest you get one and you get in touch with the student help desk to get your Office 365 package. Okay, I have two sorry. The next question is, this is my first semester and also my first time doing academic studies. So regarding references, this is new to me. Okay, let's keep the references for the end. Let me go through the rest of the questions and then we jump back to the referencing bit. Okay. Um, do we need to do literature review and survey as well? So a literature review and a survey is generally part of your research when you're attempting your thesis. As part of regular assignments during your semester, you're generally not asked to provide a literature review per se or do a survey per se. So that is something that you would be doing in your last semester when you are actually working on your thesis. Since each university has its own assignment format, can you provide the standard format used for writing assignments? Also, could you include a sample assignment written by a student for reference? Okay, so the standard format used for your particular assignment, that is all provided on your actual assignment question. There would be instructions present of what style you should be using, what your font should be, what the size should be, what your margins should be like. And obviously, once you get to know what kind of referencing style you are using, that referencing style obviously has its own set format and you are bound to follow that. So for example, if you're using APA, then it's automatically understood that you are going to be using the font, the size, the margins of a standard APA style paper. So you can look at the APA style manual on your course page and then go from there. If you need a sample assignment for a particular course, you need to get in touch with your course instructor and they would happily provide something to you. Okay, regarding referencing, how do I reference a paraphrase paragraph which I cannot locate the source cited by the writer? Is citing my own source without the original source sufficient? So if you personally know that whatever you paraphrased is coming from someone else, then you need to be citing the original source, right? However, if you, let's suppose, read through a book and by reading a certain book, you have formed an opinion of your own after looking at a certain perspective of another researcher. That could count as something that you have synthesized in your mind, and it would be sufficient to write that as your own. But as long as you're picking up something that already has been done by someone else, even if you paraphrase it, you need to cite the original author. So citing your own source without the original source would not be sufficient in this case. Can I answer my assignment using other sources as long as they correspond with IOU? Obviously, the internet is open as long as your source comes from a credible, reliable academic source, whether it's a research journal or maybe it's a book chapter or a research article or somebody's book summary or a literature review. You can, cite outside sources, but your sources should actually support your argument in the assignment. That's the whole point. Your reference should always be related to what you are, writing about. So that's okay. Please recap the name of the Microsoft tool you made mention earlier. Grammarly for grammar and spelling checks and sentence structure revisions. There's also another tool called EndNote, EndNote, which is actually a referencing tool that can help you reference, create your, bibliographies, and manage your citations. So that's also something. Why don't you have WhatsApp groups? There are WhatsApp groups for certain courses or degrees. You should get in touch with the help desk or the student affairs office, and they would assist you to get added into official groups related to your course or related to your degree if there are any. Okay, how to get plagiarism and ethical AI declaration. Once again, should be on your course page. If it's not, get in touch with your course instructor. Okay, a couple of questions are repeating themselves. I already answered those. Okay, I noticed that when submitting an assignment, we need to also submit the signed letter of statement in avoiding plagiarism. Should we print it out, sign it, scan, and put it in the final document, or how? You can actually combine that with your document and use Adobe Fill and Sign. If you have Adobe Acrobat, it has a feature of actually, saving your e-signature, your digital signature, and you can just paste that onto the document. You don't need to print it out and sign it and scan it and everything. So there's an online tool for that. You can use Adobe Acrobat. It does have a tool called Fill and Sign, and you can just add your e-signature to it. What AI tool I have to use to write assignments? See, you don't necessarily need to use AI to write an assignment. At the point of writing academic assignments, if it's 1500 or 2000 words, I strongly recommend you stick to the old method of gathering information, downloading a couple of, let's say, books or books chapters, book summaries, research articles, or maybe review papers, study them, gather an understanding of the topic, and then start writing down things in your own words. Don't rely on AI too much, especially if you're at the start of your degree. Let yourself work to become a better writer, okay? And once you are in the advanced stages of your degree, or if you're working on your thesis, then it's okay to ethically maybe use AI a little bit to just, confirm something. If you are doubtful about something, AI is a quick method to gather information in one place, okay? But I strongly recommend not relying on AI too much if it's specifically at the start of your degree. So you don't necessarily need to use an AI tool to write your assignments, okay? Can someone use Google to search for sources of references for assignment? You can obviously use Google to search. If you are looking for more academically oriented results, you can use Google Scholar. Google Scholar will give you, published articles, scholarly sources. So you can use Google Scholar as well. How do we get the logo file of the university? You can simply go to the university's website, and you can simply use a screen grabbing tool to download the logo. You also have the logo on your dashboard when you log in, somewhere in one of the upper corners, I guess. You can also download it from there. So there are many places where you can get the logo from. That's not really a big issue. Okay. How to choose assignment questions. It's not up to you to choose the assignment question, actually. You get the assignment question, and then you work on the assignment question that you get. You don't choose your assignment question. Assignment questions are released, and you have to attempt what you get. Can one use ChatGPT to search for sources? Once again, I strongly advise against relying on ChatGPT too much. I prefer in order to become a better researcher, better writer, I prefer you use the traditional method of, sitting down, writing down the keywords from your assignment question, then searching the internet by those keywords one by one, and then downloading relevant sources, organizing them nicely in a folder on your computer, and then, reading through those materials to form an opinion and an understanding of the topic, right? Don't really rely on Chat GPT too much. I really can't prohibit you from using it, but if I could, I would, because Chat GPT actually doesn't actually strengthen your ability as a writer. It just gives you a summary of everything, and then you don't actually end up using your own critical thinking. And a good assignment always comes as a result of some part of critical thinking that's involved. So I personally don't recommend using ChatGPT for assignments. If you are concerned about searching for sources, one thing you can do is, for example, if you come across a certain research article that exactly matches the content of your assignment, and you're like, wow, I certainly hit the jackpot, but you need more sources because you can't actually extract your whole assignment from a single paper. You have to cite a couple of sources at least. Some questions even mention the minimum amount of sources that need to be there. For example, you need to have at least 5 references or 10 references. So it could be, difficult to get more than those. So what I recommend is go to the reference list of that particular article you found and search out those articles by name. And then you end up having more sources. That's how you multiply on the sources that you actually have. Okay. My enrollment at IU has been so complicated, I'm unable to access one of the modules. I will get different opposite information for one email sent. I need assistance to regularize my status. I suggest that you get in touch with help desk, voice your concerns, and then they will forward your query to the relevant department, actually. Okay. Can we get a recording of this lesson? The session is being recorded, so after some time, the recording should be available on the YouTube channel, and you go back to it. You can, listen to it again. So the session is already being recorded. So you just need to go back to the YouTube channel. Okay. Okay. If I cite an Arabic book or articles, do I have to translate it both in the main documents and the bibliography? Okay. So when it comes to Arabic, if your course is Arabic, then you stick to Arabic. You don't need to actually translate anything into English. For example, if you're doing an Arabic course, stick to the Arabic and you'll be fine. If you are, however, doing a course whose medium of instruction is in English, and you wish to, cite something from the Arabic, if your word count allows you to paste the original Arabic text, you can do so in parentheses or in inverted commas, or what we call quotes. But if you feel that pasting the Arabic original text would take away from your word count and leave you with less space to actually elaborate on your assignment itself, just take a translation and properly cite the original source that you took it from, and also mention the translation, like who did the translation that you mentioned. So it's not necessary to cite both the Arabic and the English if it interferes with, adhering to your word count. If you, however, have the ability to fit both of them into your word count, it's always good to both have the Arabic and the English. But if you're struggling with adhering to your word count, having the English translation and a proper reference to the original work is sufficient. Okay, there are some questions related to midterm exams, oral exams, written exams. So these are actually questions that help desk or student affairs would be able to answer. However, your exams are proctored at specific exam centers that are registered by the IOU. Once you are near to your midterms or your final terms, you actually have a cutoff date to select the nearest center to your location and then go and attempt your exams at that specific exam center. And generally, as compared to your module tests, your midterm and final terms are actually composed of both MCQs and open-ended or descriptive questions, what you call them. Okay, someone's saying that in masters, the topics are not given. You have to choose your own topics and generate your problem statement. What do you say about this? Okay, if you have the liberty to choose your own topic, something that I always tell the students is choose a topic that you are actually genuinely curious and passionate about, right? And it's always good to choose a topic that's relevant to contemporary issues or modern issues. So that's always something that you can elaborate on. But if you have the free will of choosing your own topic, choose something that generally interests you. So you don't get stuck midway and you lose interest and you lose your motivation. Alternatively, if you're struggling with actually finding a topic, you can always write to your course instructor to give you maybe a couple of topics that he or she thinks you could choose from. They'll be happy to help. That's really not an issue. But if you have the liberty of choosing your own topic, choose something that generally interests you or something that you're curious about. Um, if anyone here is um, from the masters or from the final semesters of your degree and somebody's about to start working on their thesis soon, I do have another lecture specific to the thesis coming up on Tuesday, I think. Yes, it's on Tuesday, like the day after tomorrow. So I encourage you to join that lecture where I will be diving into research-oriented writing and your thesis in particular. So questions related to formulating your problem statement or your aims, objective research questions. You can ask those questions in that session, inshallah. Okay. Mm, my question was not answered, skipped, and other questions after mine were answered. Your question probably was repeated. Let me go through all the questions again and see if I skipped anything. Can you recommend academic search sites and content? Okay. The IIU has a library feature. There is an online library that you can access from your student dashboard. Make use of that online library. Other than that, I suggest you use Google Scholar for scholarly articles. Also, if you are looking for research articles relevant to the area of your assignment, it's always good to directly search academic journals, right? So academic journals for a particular area of research tend to have related articles in their subsequent issues. So that's something you can look to. I always avoid telling, I tell students to avoid looking into Wikipedia or, open source websites where anyone can edit the content. Skip those kinds of things. There is also for Islamic content, there is a library that's open and free, which is called Kalamullah Library. Kalamullah. Yes, Kalamullah Library has a huge collection of Islamic texts, both full volumes and summaries, comprehensive commentaries, tafsir books, hadith books, a couple of contemporary books from reputable scholars. So that's something that you can look into for Islamic sources for your assignment. You can also reference your course books if you find something relating to your assignment. You can also look into the references at the end of your course books and then directly search those books by name on Google Scholar and get PDFs and then look through those. It's always, good to get a source from the references of another source. Okay? Okay. Someone's asking, can we get assignment sample? A completely written assignment. You would have to ask your course instructor if it is policy to share, prior student assignments. I don't know if it's policy to share complete students' assignments. So you can get a sample, obviously, but I don't know if you can get a completely attempted assignment from one of the students. I don't think you can get that. You can get a sample though. Okay. I think I've gone through all the questions apart from the referencing itself. So let me quickly take down my screen and then open blank. Maybe show you some examples of referencing. Okay? Just bear with me for 2 seconds. I'm going to cover examples from the APA style, since that is the most common style that is being used, right? Okay, regarding the IU library, I tried to log in using my username and password, but I failed. If you have trouble accessing the library, get in touch with help desk and they will direct your query to the relevant department. And inshallah, your issue would be solved. Okay? Just bear with me for a couple of minutes. Okay. As I previously mentioned, there are two types of citations or references. You have your in-text references, and then you have the reference list at the end of your assignment, okay? So, okay. Let me know when the screen is visible, actually. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay. So, if you look at the screen, you can see a box, okay? There are two types of references, in text and reference list entries or end of document references. So, if you are mentioning somebody's work in the middle of your assignment, in the middle of a certain sentence, then you write the name of the author, comma, and the year of publication of the reference. And you put it in parentheses. That's called a parenthetical citation. Okay? Sometimes you actually incorporate the name of the researcher into your sentence. For example, so and so mentioned that blah, 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 blah. So that is when you mention the name of the researcher and only put the year of publication into brackets. Okay? This is called a narrative citation. So these are two types of styles you can use in your text, in your assignment. You either reference at the end of a sentence and put the name of your author and the year of publication into brackets, or you incorporate the name of the researcher into your sentence grammatically and then just put the publication year into brackets. So this is how you cite in your text. Okay? Now, when it comes to the reference list or the list at the end of your assignment, you actually have to completely mention the source. You have to write the full name of the author, which in APS style would be the last name, comma, followed by any initials, first name, middle name, or whatever, parenthesis with the year of publication, a full stop, then the full title of the particular paper or book or whatever it was, and then the journal, the volume, edition, the page numbers, and the link. So that is the difference between your citation in text and your citation at the end of your assignment. So you always need to make sure that every citation in your text has a corresponding entry in your reference list at the end of your assignment. So if you have, for example, mentioned 10 different researchers or authors in your assignment, then you also need to have exactly 10 reference list entries at the end of your document. If you skip references from the end and you have them in your text, that means that you did not cross-check your references properly, and that will result in deduction of your grade. I hope this gave you a little bit of an idea. I also suggest that you reach out to your course instructor. First of all, check on your course page. There should be a complete manual for referencing with various examples. I think you should also have the complete APA style manual. If, however, that is not on your course page, you can get in touch with your course instructor and they will be happy to send it to you. I hope that answers your question related to referencing. Okay, I have two assignments where I am being asked to write my journey within this degree and study. So what can I use as references if the assignment is on me? Okay, so for this particular type of assignment, you actually have been asked to write your own journey. So it's okay if you write it in that manner. If that is particularly, highlight the things you've learned, highlight your challenges, highlight how you've overcome your challenges, right? And yeah, you can use maybe a reference if you have found a particular method from another scholar and apply that to your study and you have found it useful, you can make mention of that and use that as a reference. But as a whole, this particular question actually asks you what you have been through and how you coped or how you actually how the journey has shaped you. So this is an exception where it does really kind of include some degree of storytelling as well. So you can write it as your own. Okay. And since you've been asked to write your own journey, there is certainly not going to be a rigid demand of, references or resources. So you can just attempt that. Okay, I think I have answered all the questions. I see one more. Do you have a physical campus or office or library as well to visit or read? Our campus is in the Gambia. So unless you are in the Gambia, I don't think there's a physical library or an office that you could use. Okay, if I cite for 2 times in assignment from the same book, so I'll cite the reference of the book 2 times at the end. No. If you are citing a single author and his work at multiple places in your assignment, your end of text reference will only have it once. But if you have, for example, 10 different people you've cited, then you need to have 10 different, matching references at the end. But if you're citing a single author at different places repeatedly, and you are citing the same work of the author. Sometimes it also happens that there is an author and he or she has published multiple books in the same year. So then you need to check. If it's a different book in the same year by the same author, then you would have 2 different references at the end. But if it's the same author, same book, same everything, just a different page number, then it's sufficient to cite it only once at the end of your assignment. Okay. I think there are no more questions as of now. In education studies, do do students only study online, or can they also talk to their supervisor? If you're talking about your thesis course and you are enrolled in your thesis course and you have a supervisor, then obviously you can talk to your supervisor anytime. But uh, the mode of study at the IOU is online, so. Okay. Let me skim through these questions one more time in order to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. I think I have answered all the questions. If there are no other questions, okay, if there are no other questions, then we can conclude the session. Yeah, I don't think there are any more questions coming in. So, inshallah, I hope this was beneficial for you. I hope that you will make use of the tips that I have tried to provide you in this short amount of time. Um, Someone's asking if we get to see the marked assignment when done. You do see your marks, your grade, but I don't think you see the marked assignment. I don't think you see the marked assignment. Okay. Um, so if you have any questions relating to your assignments, anything that may come up later, I ask our session host to maybe send out a form and maybe gather any other questions, frequently asked questions, and then we can maybe answer those frequently asked questions and put them up on the student dashboard. So students can permanently access the answers to those questions. If that's something that, yeah, inshallah. So if the student affairs office is going to reach out to you with a form or something, you can send your questions in, and I will try to compile those frequently asked questions, and then we can make them available on your student dashboards, inshallah. So you can go back to them and consult them if you get stuck somewhere, right? Jazakallah khairan for attending. Jazakallah khairan for all the questions. I hope that you have a smooth experience writing your assignments. And one thing I always tend to tell the students is you don't become a brilliant writer overnight. All the people that you see that are so proficient and have full command over academic writing, it takes years and years of practice, years and years of refinement of your skills. So, if you are still at the beginner's level, it doesn't mean that you won't become a good writer. It just takes time, takes practice, takes repeating and refining your work. Read through your assignment once you're done, at least read through it 2 to 3 times. Show your assignment to somebody outside the IOU if you have maybe a bigger, an older sister or a brother or somebody who is in the field somewhere. Get an opinion, get feedback, um, and learn how to apply that feedback to your future writing endeavors. And that's how you gradually improve. And that's how you gradually, become a better writer. And it even happens to the best of writers that we just sit staring at the screen, finishing a paragraph and not knowing what to write next. So even the best writers get stuck. So if it happens to you, don't panic. Just take a step back, relax, breathe, and recollect your um, thoughts and ideas, inshallah. So I hope that you have a wonderful journey um, as you progress in your degree, inshallah. And always do everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do it for the sake of becoming a better person, a better Muslim, and to be able to, at some point in your life, contribute to the Ummah with the knowledge that you have gathered. And inshallah, Allah will reward you for the efforts, for the challenges, for the hardships that you endure during your studies. And inshallah, everything will be worth it. So once again, Jazakallah khairan for attending. And I hope you have a wonderful semester ahead of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.